This is Secure Cyber Connect podcast with Jay Adamson and Warren Atkinson, where we're joined by information, cybersecurity, technology and talent acquisition professionals who share their journey, unique perspectives and offer advice and guidance. Today we're joined by Lianne Potter, head of SecOps for the largest greenfield technology transformation project in Europe. Lianne is building a leading-edge security team from scratch to meet the needs of a modern retail organisation, whilst empowering her team to think innovatively, create new standards in best practices. Lianne has delivered talks across the globe to share her vision for a new type of security function. Drawing upon her expertise as a cyber anthropologist through her consultancy, the Anthrosecurist, her practical experience as a security-focused software developer and as a security practitioner, Lianne combines the human and the technical aspects of security to evangelize a culture of security transformation. She's on the advisory board for a community enterprise aimed at encouraging diversity in tech, is a published author, podcast regular, and recently won Computing.com's Security Specialist of the Year for her work on human-centric approaches to security. In 2021, she also won 2 awards for Security Leader of the Year 2021 and Woman of the Year in the Enterprise category, and in 2023 she won Cyber Personality of the Year in the Real Cyber Awards. You can listen to Lianne every Thursday on her award-winning tech podcast, Compromising Positions, and she is also doing a Master's in AI and Data Science throughout 2024. Lianne, welcome to Secure Cyber Connect podcast, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Firstly, Lianne, I'd like to ask, what has brought you here today, and what are you looking to achieve from the podcast?
Well, I was asked, but that's always a good start. I know how fun it is from my own podcast, getting people onto the show. But I feel like I have a unique perspective on the cybersecurity industry coming from an anthropological background. So I started off my tech career as a digital anthropologist, then decided I want to get a bit hands-on with this tech malarkey. So I thought I would teach myself how to code. So I became a software developer. I then got interested in cybersecurity, and now I merged the two of anthropology and cybersecurity.
Fantastic. And I guess one of the things we typically always ask our guests is if you could kindly share something with us that you're either proud of, excited about, or maybe wish to shine a light on that isn't on your...
Well, for me, I was thinking about this. I think a moment that's not on my LinkedIn profile that makes me proud, which is really hard because I'm such a braggart on LinkedIn. I have no modesty at all on there. So it was really hard to kind of pick. But I think my things I'm most proud of is being a good friend. I was thinking about it the other day. There's a couple of people in my friendship group that have had really hard times, and it's not been easy to kind of support them and be there. But I feel like there's been circumstances where without kind of me being there, things might not have gone so well. And so I'm very proud that I still get to speak to certain friends of mine every day when I might not have been able to.
Yeah, good. And it's nice to have that relationship where you can confide in each other and support each other. So I think one of the sort of things we want to kick off with here is in continuing to sort of recognize that humans can often be a vulnerable link within the security chain. Strategies and best practices do you sort of feel we need to enhance, and in terms of maybe education or training, culture, maybe security measures, things like that, ensuring resilience as a result?
Yeah, so I think for one thing, talking about people as if they are the weakest link or most vulnerable link gets us nowhere.
Yes.
The trouble we have in cybersecurity is that we really struggle to get people on side. We're often the most under-resourced, under-loved area of the business. And nobody pays attention to us because whenever we do, we tell people they're doing stuff wrong. We stop them from doing things they want to do. And basically, a lot of cybersecurity teams are not business enablers when they should be. And a lot of that's down to fear and self-preservationists. And I totally get it. We've had to be self-preservationists because, as I say, smallest team, you've got not enough eyes to look at all the vulnerabilities in your organization or the blind spot. It's easier to say no sometimes rather than think about, actually, how can I help and support people going forward? But it starts with the conversation, and I think we don't do that very well. And that's what really attracted me to cybersecurity in the first place, because I was working in the software development arm, of an organization, a big tech organization. And their goal was collaborate and innovate. However, whenever we had to engage with the cybersecurity team, that innovation stopped and that collaboration stopped pretty much. And I, from my anthropological background, thought that was very interesting that you've got two opposing cultures. You've got one culture that is very much interested in building relationships, working together, trying to solve solutions, and the other one where it just completely shuts you down. And so I joined the cybersecurity team with that interest in mind. Like, why are the cybersecurity teams like this? And it became very apparent. A lot of it was down to fear and mistrust. And that fear and mistrust developed over time because we've not been able to let people make decisions around security.
Okay.
And by that, it's because we just don't have a conversation. We don't find out what is the baseline understanding of people's security understanding. And I'm particularly thinking in technical roles as well. When I was a software developer, I could be an expert in JavaScript or Python. I could really focus on. But in cybersecurity, I don't have that luxury of being able to be an expert in anything because my job is to understand a little bit about everything to do with tech and advise on how to secure that. But I think we should leverage our technical experts more in our organizations. When you're speaking to the software development team, you should try and coach them, lead them to be more secure, and you lead on them for the expertise instead. I think that would save us so much time and effort. And eventually, as you build up that trust, people have a lot more autonomy. And you want your people to be more autonomous when it comes to making security decisions because with it, you cannot keep your eyes on everything. And so any kind of help or support you can get is very much welcome, but that can only be achieved if you build up that trusting relationship. Now, I'm not saying let people do whatever they like. What I'm saying is listen to what people are saying, not saying about the struggles that they're facing to be able to act in a secure manner. Now, that could be they work in a 2-week sprint, and therefore the way you work in cybersecurity doesn't align with that. Figure out a way how you can help to work and align with that. Don't just wait until you're at the end of the process at testing and then put blockers on everything. Figure out where they need the help and support. Do they need training on OWASP Top 10? Do they need training on other areas? Give them that training. Teach them how to threat model for themselves. Just little tiny things where they will build up their competence in cybersecurity and they'll come to you as a trusted advisor. It will enable you to be freed up to be able to focus on other areas of the business as well.
For sure. And how else do you feel that we can kind of encourage that accountability at sort of both personal and corporate level?
Accountability is interesting. So accountability means that at some point you're accepting the fact that you will be put on trial for your decision. Because basically it means if you're accountable for something, you're going to have to justify your actions at some point. And for people to feel like they have the psychological safety to be able to be accountable for something, rather than just a name on a receipt or anything like that, they need to feel like they've been given as much training and knowledge they can to make informed decisions. And again, I just don't think we do that enough in cybersecurity. We'll go up to a business and say, hey, on my RACI, you're accountable for this. And that'll be it. That'll be the end of the discussion. And you'll find that in a lot of organizations, people don't volunteer themselves up to be accountable for things on the RACI because of that very reason. We don't give people enough knowledge and information of how to successfully be accountable. And accountability, as I say, when it comes to the fact that you have to justify your actions, now that doesn't mean that eventually you will make the wrong decision. You might do, but decisions should be made on the basis that it's all the correct information you have at that time, and you feel like you're making the right decision at that time. That should be without impunity. So you should not be kind of penalized if that was everything all the training you've had, all the information you've been given, that was the correct information, then that is the right decision. But I just don't think we support people enough to have the psychological safety to be accountable.
Well, hopefully that will change going forward. And I think one of the other things we wanted to discuss today was, I guess, the digital divide. And the digital divide refers to sort of the gap between individuals and households and businesses and geographic areas of sort of different socioeconomic levels. And I guess any opportunity to access information and communication technologies and people's use of the internet in general. So very briefly, how big is this problem, and in what ways can the digital divide manifest?
Yeah, so when I was training to be an anthropologist, the digital divide was one of the main kind of components of my research. So the digital divide posits if you do not have access to online services or the skills to access online services, that you will be socially disadvantaged in some way. And I was very lucky that after I qualified as an anthropologist, I was able to get a job as an anthropologist working for a charity. And I was given £5 million budget, and my brief was solve destitution in Leeds. So quite a big brief. But what we were finding was at the same time, the UK government had changed its benefit system to being online. And as a result of that, people coming into our service who'd not eaten in days, about to be made homeless, real dire straits. And we would talk to them and you'd say, well, what's going on? Why haven't you signed on? And they said, well, I went into the office, the job centre, to sign on, and I was pointed to a bank of computers and said, it's all done online now. Now, if you've never touched a computer before, then that's a really scary thing. And then the other advice was, oh, if you don't know how to use a computer, go to the library. But if you've never been to a library before, you might perceive the library as quite a lofty place that you don't want to go visit. And so there was all these barriers to people. The most vulnerable people in society were not able to access funds that were rightfully theirs, because the system had moved so quickly and not considered the fact that the most vulnerable in society might not be able to do it completely online. Now, at the time, you could also call in, but at the time it was a chargeable number, and it was something like 60 pence an hour. Now, if you're on a pay-as-you-go mobile, which most of my clients were, and they have like £10 of credit a month, you're snookered, right?
There's no wait time that on the whole usually.
Oh yeah, it takes about an hour before you'd even be connected to anyone. So telephone wasn't a viable option. So we spent most of our time and our resources just doing these forms online for people and then training people up on training courses. Now, luckily with that piece of work, I was able to justify the funding. You have to write reports, and all my reports were about how the digital divide was in action. But what people think of when they think of the digital divide, it often is older people, the elderly. However, my most vulnerable group was two areas. It was the very young, so ages 16 to 25, and it was people approaching middle age, so people aged 40 to 55. Now, why those two demographics? That was I seeing that most often with. Now, the younger demographics, a lot of that had to do with the fact if you've been through the care system as a child, the likelihood of you having any access to your own computer, your own smartphone, or even the internet sometimes is very low. And so we've got a whole swathe that we don't talk about still to this day, really, of young people that are entering the work market, having been through the care system, because you get kind of sent off once you get 16, coming through the care system with no ability to be able to access online services to a good enough standard. Because people always assume, oh, the younger generation, they're the tech natives. Not if you've never had access. You can't be a tech native if you've never had access. And then the other group we were finding, as I say, was sort of the middle-aged group, and it was people who had most likely done manual labour jobs most of their lives, and then all of a sudden they got made redundant from their job. And again, if you've never had to use a computer before, you've never had to build those skills. And so that's what we were seeing quite often. It was never the elderly people. The elderly people are actually really tech savvy because they've got the computer clubs and things like that. These two demographics are absolutely left into the wilderness, and we forget about that. CyberSafe did a report, the Low Behave report last year, and it actually found the two most generations that were most vulnerable to attack was not boomers. Actually, they were one of the least vulnerable. It was Gen Z and millennials. They were the most likely to be hit by cyber attack.
What's usually the reason for that is, Lianne?
Yeah. So a lot of it is due to prevalence online, but especially the younger generation, they've always grown up with the internet, and so they are much more trusting. They are much more likely to give up pieces of information, data, in exchange for a freebie, a coupon, or something like that.
Yeah, I was certainly seeing a trend, especially within sort of more underdeveloped areas when it comes to those freebies, for instance, where organizations gamifying individuals to coach them in. To step back from what you said, I was actually reading a report earlier this morning, just by PwC, and it highlighted the digital divide there and spoke around about sort of 4 billion people across the globe actually not even having basic access to infrastructure and information community systems and technologies. If we sort of further extrapolate that as well, there's the addition of around about some 20% that have access to the internet but can't afford it due to sort of economic crisis, for instance, especially one we perhaps find ourselves within sort of a global scale at this point in time. And there are a lot of organizations out there that are trying to perhaps combat that. There's also a lot of charities that are trying to bridge that gap. But as you mentioned, the areas that predominantly, more traditionally, organizations are focusing on aren't the ones that are the most vulnerable. So what would you suggest would be sort of the best thing for organizations or individuals sort of moving forward if they want to sort of help reduce that gap?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about reading reports. This report is really widely available about how different generations are affected by cyber incidents and things like that. It's about knowing your audience a bit more and challenging your own assumptions. I think that's the key thing, that if you just assume that this is how it is because you see a lot of young people with mobile phones all the time, you just assume they're okay and know what they're doing. And then you get your mum asking you, how do I upload this? And you just think, in your mind, you correlate, okay, this person doesn't know what they're doing, this person does. But that's not really the case. Like, my mum is very cybersecurity aware. It's not just because I work in this industry. She always has been. She's always sort of said, hey, can I just show you something? What do you think? And always asking an opinion. Whereas I've never had a young person come up to me and do that. And they're more likely to click on something. So it's challenging that assumptions of what we believe is skills and expertise in the tech industry.
But what do you think of sort of, I guess, many of these multifaceted approaches sort of from a government perspective, so things like one laptop per child and Google Station, these kind of things? How successful do you think these initiatives have been so far?
I think it would be excellent if we could see more of that. I was a school governor during COVID at my local primary school, and one of the things we were really kind of in desperation for was the fact that you had households that maybe had, if they had a laptop, it would be just one. It was a school in a sort of deprived area. Many people, their only access to the internet was their mobile phones. And when you've got 3 kids trying to be homeschooled during lockdown, trying to learn on a mobile phone with mum's internet, probably again, like pay-as-you-go kind of contract situation, like limited amount of internet, then we're in big trouble when we're trying to think about how do we make sure that nobody's left behind when it comes to accessing online services. So one of the things we have to do is put in budget requests and say, look, we need iPads or equivalent of, we need dongles so that people can start using this. And then again, if you've got a class happening in one time and then another time and another time and there's clashes, someone's got to be left out at some point. And there is more we could be doing in this space, for sure. Digital literacy is just like any type of literacy now. It would be a crime not to teach a kid right now. Just in the way it'd be a crime not to teach a kid the basics of digital literacy.
Yeah, most definitely. And what do you feel the adverse effects of the digital divide's perhaps going to have on the cybersecurity workforce so moving forward? So certainly see UK government in particular making proactive investments into more junior individuals coming into the industry, especially those that are in higher education at the moment of transition now. Mm-hmm. Of course, the digital divide is getting bigger. How do you feel that we can help?
Yeah, I think a lot of it needs to be a discussion around understanding what you're giving up when it comes to privacy. I think that's particularly for the younger generation. That's the one where they're a bit more laissez-faire about giving up their data. They don't see the value in it and the potential misuse cases that could occur from it. And I think that's on a personal level, but then you put that into the context of business. And we're surrounded by red tape and regulation about what we can and can't share about our customers and etc. It's about having those conversations about this is why privacy matters and this is why it matters to individuals and it matters to yourself. And I think those conversations need to be had a lot more, particularly on the onboarding process. It's not the most exciting thing in the world to do cybersecurity awareness training and data governance training, but it's really important.
And on the training and development side of things, one thing myself and Jay have certainly seen from organizations that have got more of a mature security posture is the HR player role, especially when it comes to that onboarding or dealing with IAM panel, our backs, for instance. They've tried to embed a sort of a positive cybersecurity culture from day one. It is certainly what we're seeing from some more mature organizations. But what other steps do you think organizations perhaps can take to help combat that digital divide?
I think one of the best things you can do is think about user experience. I think a lot of cybersecurity controls fall down because of poor user experience. That's why you see workarounds happen all the time. If you have a password requirement that says it's got to be 12 characters long and you've got to include exclamation points or whatever, special characters, uppercase, lowercase, and numbers, but it can't be anything to do with the last 3 passwords, but then you really narrow it down. And people are like, I can't think of anything. I've been sat here for like 5 minutes trying to work out a new password and your restrictions are really stopping me from doing it. What happens then is people make really crappy passwords and just do a variation on that. It's really, and it's because nobody's gone through the security process experience like a user researcher team would and gone, okay, so how does this feel for you to reset your password every 6 weeks or whatever it is? Because a lot of organizations still do the whole thing of reset your password often, where even though guidance says you should only reset when you've had a breach. And just kind of understanding, like, people are busy. People don't care about cybersecurity. And it's not really your job to make them care because you're supposed to be looking after the process. But what you can do is enable good behaviors that encourage safety, that encourage better security. And you can only do that by understanding the process. So if you've got a customer service team, for example, and they have to access 5 systems and you don't provide them with a password manager or single sign-on, yeah, they are going to write down those passwords. It's your job to go, okay, can I sit with you and see what you do on a day-to-day basis? And go, all right, that's interesting. So you write down your 5 passwords because we've not enabled you to do this. I mean, you can think about where you can put those gaps. But people don't have those conversations with people in cybersecurity. We don't have a curious mindset of how people are working. Instead, we just put a load of controls in place and hope that they work. And that's when workarounds happen.
Thank you. So, Mel, I wanted to be able to talk to as well sort of some more sort of community and non-profit initiatives. How important do you feel community and non-profit initiatives and the challenges that you're seeing within this space and how you feel maybe addressing these challenges?
Having come from a third sector background, I'm very much aware about the gaps that non-profit organizations have to fill. But I do think that because they work at ground roots levels, you actually learn a lot more anyways. And you can really tailor community initiatives to the audience you're going for. The best ones I've seen are ones that have been led by the individuals using that service, where they have a really strong say and dictate how they want things to go and where you should be focusing on, where if you get any budget, where that should be going to better whatever community group that you're improving on. So I think they're incredibly important. They're just really hard to get off the ground.
Absolutely. And I mean, you've built sort of diverse, you've driven a lot of innovation. You've worked obviously in enabling a lot of transformation. Where do you see the challenges in this space now and in terms of sort of security and technology in general? And how do you feel business leaders are best to sort of tackle this?
I'm really proud. It might be on LinkedIn, going back to your first question, it might be on LinkedIn or something, but I'm really proud that my team is a 50-50 gender split. And that's pretty good going considering it's a technical team as well. And it's not been through anything I've made sure I've done or anything like that, but I think it's about being a very visible leader. So whenever I put a job advert on or anything like that, I'll do a video to camera and I'll say, like, this is the team you're going to work in. This is the kind of things that we're doing in this team. And I think people resonate with that. I think what's going to be more and more important going forward is, particularly with a lot of organizations asking for a return back to the office, and then all of a sudden noticing that quite a lot of their team can't do it due to a caring responsibility, where, I wonder why we're not hitting our diversity numbers anymore. It's like, well, have a think about that. Have a think about the impact your decisions are making on individuals. And not necessarily just women, but anyone with caring responsibilities. I think the return back to the office from some organizations, like a dramatic return. I've seen some people saying it's now 4 days a week that you've got to be in the office. And I do like going in the office, but it has to be for a good reason. And I think some of these organizations are not really kind of picking out good enough reasons, apart from it looks good because we rent it.
It's hard as well. I mean, as you say, some of them, instead of a soft transition, some of them have really pivoted hard.
Yeah. But I'm very much a component of, like, in this type of job, unless you're maybe doing night shifts in a SOC or anything like that, there is a degree of flexibility we can offer people. But one of the big things I would say to anyone that is thinking about how do they get the most out of their recruitment going forward is think about offering stuff part-time. It's very rare that you see jobs in cybersecurity being offered on a part-time basis. But when I speak to individuals, that's all people really want. I would much rather have someone brilliant for 3 or 4 days a week than someone mediocre for 5 days a week. And I think if you advertise every role, which I do, as both being full-time and part-time, I really like seeing the different type of candidates I get. And I've had some really good success of people who would never have applied unless I offered that role part-time as well.
It seems that you're making things a lot more approachable as opposed to those more traditional organizations that take more of a corporate approach to recruitment and their EVP, for instance. And something I know we've spoken about each other on occasions, and I just really want to commend you on the ongoing success of your team, especially given the environment you work with them. I'm just curious if you share a bit of knowledge or best practices around developing that culture in terms of the DevSec Ops culture, because that's certainly where we're seeing a lot of organizations want to sort of pivot their focus, but it's sometimes perhaps doing it in the wrong way. So firstly, what would you say the best approach would be to the textbook approach and the most practical approach, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so we established a DevSec Ops function from scratch. We didn't have one to start with. Most people go DevOps and then go to DevSec Ops, but we thought, hey, we don't have either, so let's just go straight for DevSec Ops. My recommendation would be hire a dev. Don't hire a cybersecurity person for that role. DevSec Ops is a cultural mindset more than just a technical framework, I would say. That piece I said earlier about if someone's working a 2-week sprint, you need to have someone on side that understands the challenges of working in a 2-week sprint. You need someone on side that understands that why do features get picked over bug fixes? And I think that's really important to hire someone who has that kind of insider knowledge, who was one of them. If you're trying to get a team on side, it's usually more helpful to have someone go, oh yeah, I used to be a dev. I can look into this for you. I can help you understand this from our perspective. And I also know the challenges you're facing. Again, it's about empathy in a way, about understanding what people are facing and how they are facing it. Because we're all targeted in different ways in our organization. My target is to not let a cybersecurity incident happen. An engineer's target is to work on the latest releases. The sales team have their targets, etc. None of those align, really, to a big picture. So we're all kind of fighting against each other for achieving what we've been set by an organization to do. But instead of having it where someone succeeds, the other side has to fail, it's about how do we work together so we can both achieve our goals? And again, it's all about communication.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That's brilliant. And in terms of tooling versus perhaps personnel, appreciate your background itself is obviously on the software side of things. But yeah, what are you seeing within the security space at this point in time? Are you seeing organizations perhaps pick tooling and solutions over actually bringing in personnel? And how do you see that changing in sort of the next 12 to 24 months?
I think we'll always be fascinated by the tool. And don't get me wrong, I love a tool. There's so many stuff I couldn't do in my job about really great tools. A big component of it. But it's about making sure, is it the right tool for you? Not kind of being taken in a little bit by some of the snake oil that's going around. I'm going to say the word AI going forward. Not everything needs to be AI enabled or have AI running through it. Yeah, it's about really understanding what problem are you trying to solve here. And it might not be done in a single tool. And it might not be done with the most expensive tool. You don't always have to pay loads to get value out of things. There's some really great open source tools out there, especially if you're a smaller organization. Don't feel like you have to go for the big, expensive, shiny tool. There's other stuff out there that can really help you along the way. But the key thing is, how to use it. Because if you're trying to demonstrate return on investment and then you've just bought a piece of shelfware, then you're not going to get that funding next year either. So.
No, and I think that's also, I think a lot of people are a bit scared of making the right decisions, and I think that's definitely demonstrated.
I think the key thing would be to ask yourself, if this lands in my environment tomorrow, will I know how to use it? Will I know how to use it this week, next month, 6 months? And if the answer is no, don't buy it.
Sage advice.
Well, that makes sense. And genuinely, you want to ask Lianne a piece around obviously effective communication with C-suite.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, we understand that effective communication in the C-suite is vital for sort of successful transformation, and securing allies is definitely important, and using sort of that more buy-in. We often sort of use analogies in situations as such as this. What would be your sort of go-to analogy for sort of simplifying technical concepts?
Good question. Well, when I'm speaking to the C-suite, I've owned a few businesses in my time. I know as a business owner what I actually want to hear. And is it going to cost me money up front? Is it going to cost me later if I don't do anything? Right? How is it going to affect my bottom line? And understanding if that's the driver, which is for quite a lot of organizations, that's how you frame what you're talking about. But you don't do it through scaremongering. I think that doesn't help at all. I think there was a study in a research paper, a psychology research paper, that talked about fear, uncertainty, and doubt, not necessarily for cyber security, but just in general, when anyone uses that rhetoric, and about how much actually turns people off from the message. And actually, humor is the number one way to convince people to do stuff. So I think, I'm not going to say go to your C-suite about doing a stand-up routine or anything like that, but I think if you come at it with some humility and almost optimism about what can be achieved, frame the security narrative as a value add rather than a preventative method. Like, we want to be the very best we can be for our customers, for example. And if they've got a choice between going with company X or us, and company X has had a major breach, and we think, right, no, we're going to prove to you that we keep your data and your details safe and secure. And we do it in such a way where we live it, not just say it, not just say, oh, we take your security very seriously, like we all do when a breach happens. That's the way you should play it. You should play it as a value add. And we've got loads of value to offer in security. And we just think the narrative for too long has been too focused on the negative aspects of, like, oh, if we don't do this, then this will happen, and the regulators. All very true. But that's not what the C-suite want to hear. The C-suite wants to hear, how do I become a value-led proposition for our customers so that they buy more and profits increase? Because, don't know about you, but working in a cybersecurity field in a company that's not a cybersecurity company, I really care if we make some money so that I can actually get paid for this job. So it's in my best interest to make sure that the company is being profitable so that I can continue to get paid. Now, that might mean having really frank discussions about risk. Now, risk isn't a dirty word. Risk leads to innovation. Like, the most innovative companies in the world are risk takers. The most innovative people in the world are risk takers. Risk means making decisions based on all the information that you have and making choices about whether or not you can pursue a line of technology, a line of control, for example, in terms of cybersecurity. Making calculated risk based on that. And I think too often we see risk as something to fear and something to shut down, mitigate completely. And by mitigate completely, I mean actually then putting controls in place that actually prevent people from being able to innovate and being able to do the things they need to do to be profitable in an organization.
Absolutely. So with all of our guests, we are sort of following on from that. We're going to ask you to share with us another analogy, genuine, in any sort of circumstance that you may find effective.
Right.
Yeah, a good example of that, perhaps, would be you've had guests share the moat and castle on the house, airplane, car, for instance, and we've used that as an analogy. Is there one that stood out to you that you've perhaps heard from a peer?
The analogy I use about cybersecurity and why it should be easier than it is the fact that whenever we leave the house, we lock the door and we don't even think about that. We ritualize our physical security with a lot of ease. Apart from maybe if you're a bit distracted, you might go, did I lock the door? But most of the time we just do it without thinking. We leave the house, we lock the door, we've made sure the windows are closed and we leave and we're happy as Larry to go on with the rest of our day. We take out insurance to kind of protect our houses. Maybe we'll put in CCTV, maybe we get a dog. All those little things that we do, and we're happy to do so. But there's something about when it comes to cybersecurity that we kind of get into a bit of a tids about, and then we get a bit scared, and we put our heads in the sand, and we just hope someone else will deal with it. But there is no cybersecurity police out there. We are on our own. And we could all do more to make sure that we're all safe and secure. And think about ritualizing your cybersecurity just like you ritualize your home security.
Sorry, man. Good advice.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Anything else that sort of as a sort of final thought that you feel you'd like to share with the audience?
I think that if you know who you're speaking to, that's half the battle. And I think we could all take time to reach out to different people in our organization and really understand where they're coming from. If you really care about your blind spots, go find those blind spots and find out about it. But do it with an open heart and open mind. Go in with curiosity. People love talking about themselves. So ask them, what are you working on? At first, people will turn around and go, oh no, why is cybersecurity coming to speak to me? They will all do it. But if you just say, look, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm here to help you. And I can only help you if I know if you need help or what would help, what services I can offer to help you and make sure that you can meet your deadlines in time, that you stay on budget and things like that. And it's just about having that initial conversation.
Good advice. So, well, I guess thank you very much. I'd like to obviously finish by saying that you can listen to Lianne every Thursday on her award-winning tech podcast, Compromising Positions. Let Lianne, just outside of the secure Cyber Connect community platform, where else would it be possible for our listeners to reach you?
As I say, I'm constantly humble bragging on LinkedIn. So if you want to be spammed, that's probably the best way to reach me. I also do quite a lot of public speaking. Again, if you look on LinkedIn, you'll probably find out where I am next. Also got a YouTube channel as well. It's Compromising Position. Please, listeners, I would recommend for you, type in at work, Compromising Position Cybersecurity Podcast. Don't just type in Compromising Position. I cannot be held responsible for any HR mess that you get yourself into. It is Cybersecurity Podcast at the end, and you'll find us that way.
Absolutely.
I've been following the podcast and the YouTube channel for quite some time. Really appreciated the content that you and Jeff put out there. So to all of our listeners, certainly you check that out.
Thank you very much.
And Lianne, we'd like to thank you and the community, all our listeners. We trust you found value in today's session. To continue the discussion and for a more sustained engagement, we also invite you to join the Secure Cyber Connect community. And we offer a range of collaborative solutions for both the technology and security professionals. And this expanded community access, cross-section neutral mentorship programs, weekly online networking sessions, and a range of exclusive interviews, panel discussions, and masterclasses. If you need to learn more and you want to gain access to the Secure Cyber Connect community, our initiatives, please visit secure-recruitment.com/cyber-connect/.